For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warmer, friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Heaps with myself, Craig Heaps Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. As joining me in segment number 2, the one and only Rob Donaldson. He does great work over at Underdog Fantasy, his YouTube feed, youtube.com/Rob Donaldson, doing all sorts of great shows, and we're going to be discussing with him what he's all taking a look at in terms of the Friday slate, some of the teams that he's looking to back and fade, some of the characteristics of teams that he's looking to back and fade as well. We were doing this as a lot of the Thursday games were going on, so not as much reaction on things like, the insanity of Oakland being able to knock off Kentucky, which is what makes this tournament just so great in general. But we're going to be looking forward to Friday with them, discussing a few futures as well, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on all 16 games on the betting board for this NCAA Tournament Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_41. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please just send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had ourselves a fun day of college basketball on Thursday, one that saw a little bit of everything. So let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Many would lead off with Oakland taking down Kentucky, but I am going to lead it off with one of the biggest upchuckings that we've ever seen in college basketball. Nevada blows a 19-point lead in the final 7+ minutes to lose to Dayton. 63-60 the final. I mean, this was just real bad. Actually, it was a 17-point lead. I know that there were some spots that were saying it was a 19-point lead, some that said it was 17, but they get up 56-39 with 7 minutes and change remaining. And then from there, they get outscored by a total of 24-4. Oy vey, this was just absolutely terrible. And I mean, this from a Nevada team that has been really good against the spread all season long. They've been a nice money-making team, and it wasn't just in the Mountain West as well. They took down teams like TCU out of conference as well. Nevada ends the year 21-12 against the spread, and Dayton, they were able to get out at the right time. And Nevada, if you saw that offense that they ran at the back half of it, what in the heck was that? But I mean, for Dayton, give them credit. They're able to survive. They're able to advance, and a big reason why they were able to do so. How about what you were able to get late in this game from Kobe Brea? He was able to knock down some very nice threes for this team, as overall for Dayton, it wasn't falling for them early, but they do end the game shooting 8 of 19 from three-point range overall. For Brea, he was able to contribute 15 points. J-Ron Holmes, 18 points, 9 rebounds. As Nevada, they play even up on the glass. They play even up with regards to turnovers, but they go just 7 of 22 from three-point range. And for Nevada, a team that has been doing the little things really well. 3 of 6 at the free throw line. Dayton, 13 of 15 at the free throw line. That's where this game was truly lost for Nevada, and boy, that was rough to say the least. Dan Monson, he's going to be going out of Long Beach State after the Arizona Wildcats took them down 85-65, and depending upon your number as to whether or not you were able to get a cover with Long Beach State or if you were able to get a push. This one was anywhere between 20 to 20.5, and this has been a team out there in the Pac-12 in Arizona that has been able to do a tremendous job against the spread. 21-13 ATS for them. I know that a lot of places have more of the 20.5, so many places got this as an ATS loss, but there were some 20s out there if you seek them out. And for Long Beach State, they actually held in there in the first half. They were only down 6 at halftime, and then Arizona just took hold from there. Long Beach State could only go 3 of 17 from three-point range, while Arizona 13 of 35 from the outside. Kylan Boswell was really able to take over this game, 20 points. A little bit surprising that Arizona only had one player score off the bench. That'd be Jaden Bradley. They've shortened up their rotation a little bit, but Arizona absolutely dominates on the turnover front, 13-9. They actually lose a rebound battle, 50-47, as Long Beach State hauled in their 17 offensive rebounds, but not enough in this game, despite the fact that Abubakar Traore is able to give you 14 points, 15 rebounds. A little bit of a feel-good story, and part of the reason why I led off with Arizona there. Pac-12 was out 4-0 straight up and against the spread in this NCAA tournament. If you got the Arizona more of the 20 number, that would be 3-0-1 against the spread. If you got the 20.5, 3-1 against the spread. But Washington State, they take down Drake by a count of 66-60, and for the Drake, they go 5-15 from three-point range. Tucker DeVries, he put in there 14 points, 6 assists, but at the end of the game, it got a little bit harebrained there. As for Drake, they do a solid job winning the turnover battle by a count of 13-8, but they lose the rebound battle 40-32. Washington State has been good on the glass all season long, and it was all about keeping up with the Jones. Isaac Jones, 20 points, 11 boards. Washington State gets the job done, and so does Oregon. How about Jermaine Cuisinart having 40 points against his former school in South Carolina, 87-73 the final, and for South Carolina, they lose this game going 11-24 from three-point range. Our guy, Colin Murray Boyles, did not have a great game, just 6 points out of him, but you did have Michi Johnson go off for 24, but for Cuisinart, 40 points on 22 shots, goes 5 of 9 from three-point range. South Carolina loses the turnover battle 11-10, but more importantly, they lost the rebound battle 32-26, as well as Fali Dante. He was able to own the paint. He had 23 points, so the Pac-12 showing very well right now in the NCAA tournament, and is not showing very well right now in the NCAA tournament. That'd be the SEC. They have won one game thus far in the NCAA tournament, and that was Tennessee absolutely lambasting the St. Peter's Peacocks 83-49 the final. And if you had the under in this game like I did, technical fouls cost you the under. Just absolute brutality right there. As for St. Peter's, they shoot 29% from the floor, 4 of 24 from 3. Meanwhile, for Tennessee, Don't Connect was connecting. 23 points, 4 of 8 from 3. Tennessee goes 11 of 24 from three-point range. And for St. Peter's, they only commit 6 turnovers in this game, but they just couldn't make anything of it. As for Tennessee, you had Zakai Ziegler put in there a double-double, 11 points, 10 assists. His brother is on the flip side of things, as you had off the bench Armani Ziegler, not really have himself a game to remember for St. Peter's. He had as many points as myself. Meanwhile, the disappointment out there in the SEC, that'd be Kentucky. 80-76. Kentucky loses to Oakland as Jack Golke. He put on a show. Off the bench, 10 of 20 from three-point range for 32 points. For Kentucky, this defense has been lackluster and sad all season long, and was once again here. Antonio Reeves did his best for Kentucky. 27 points, 5 of 9 from three-point range. Meanwhile, you had everyone else fall a little bit short. Reed Shepherd, who's been so good for the team all season long, 3 points on 5 shots in 26 minutes. You had this Kentucky team lose the turnover battle 11-7. They lose the rebound battle 40-39. They gave up so many second chances in that first half. Trey Townsend, 17 points, 12 rebounds. Kentucky legitimately deserved to lose this game, and gotta wonder where Kentucky goes moving forward after that. And you saw Mississippi State get lambasted by Michigan State to begin the day, 69-51 the final. And for Michigan State, they go 10 of 23 from three-point range. Mississippi State just 6 of 27 from the outside. And I mean, for Mississippi State, the defense wasn't awful. They forced Michigan State, who doesn't turn the ball over a lot, into 16 turnovers, but where they were supposed to win this game was on the glass. They lose the battle 35-29, as you had Josh Hubbard throwing their 15 points, but DJ Jeffries had just 2 rebounds in this game. Tolu Smith, he had just 2 rebounds in this contest as well. Meanwhile, for Michigan State, how about we were able to get out Jaden Akins, 15 points, 7 rebounds. So that was very good for them. And Matty Sissoko, the much maligned on this podcast, Matty Sissoko, he was able to supply the team with 9 rebounds. So Michigan State, they find a way to get the job done. BYU does not. BYU falls to Duquesne 71-67. This was a little bit of a body clock game for BYU. They go 8 of 24 from 3. And for Duquesne, it's been a whole lot greater than some of its parts team all season long. Jimmy Clark, Day Grant, they combined for 30 points. But on this day, it was one Jacob Nisis, the freshman from Czech Republic, who's averaging about 2.5 points per contest, who came up big. 12 points, 6 boards, 3 blocks for Duquesne. They do a nice job winning that turnover battle by a count of 12-11. They do lose a rebound battle by a count of 35-29, as you had Spencer Johnson do all he could for BYU. 16 rebounds for the team, so I needed his part, but BYU used to shooting it a little bit better. The Duquesne defense holds up, and they pull off a nice upset. And then you did see the 16 seed in Wagner not be able to fare so well against North Carolina. We had no upset in this one. 90-62 the final, as It was a pretty rough day for underdogs, not going to lie. As for North Carolina, they go 9 of 18 from three-point range. R.J. Davis, 22 big points. Armando Bacot, 20 points, 15 rebounds. You figured that this was going to be a blowout. You just didn't know how big the margin was going to be. And Melvin Council, he was able to give the team 18 points. You had also Julian Brown throwing their 18 points, but that's those two guys. You really didn't get anything out of a Wagner team that had a rotation of 7 total guys for Illinois. They were able to really separate in the second half against Morehead State. This was a nip and tuck game in the first half, as Morehead State was down just 1 point at the half, and with about 14 minutes remaining, it was a tied-up game, and then Illinois, they were able to have just Marcus Domas take over this game. A triple-double, 12 points, 11 boards, 10 assists. Illinois goes 12 of 26 from 3. Morehead State had Riley Minix be able to give this team a relatively solid effort, 27 points, and they go 11 of 30 from 3-point range against an Illinois team that still have my question marks with regards to this defense, but the Illinois overs, they just continue to come through. As for Illinois, 25 overs to just 10 unders thus far this season, and I do have to mention with Duquesne playing the under against BYU on Thursday, they are now your top under team in all of college basketball. How about 9 overs, 25 unders, and a push for Duquesne this season? So they have really been able to make you some money on that front, but for Morehead State, they just weren't able to give you a little bit more in this one to be able to get the cover, as Illinois wins a rebound battle by a count of 37-32, and you had Terrence Shannon be able to supply the team with 26 points as well. Mountain West had a really, really rough day on Thursday, by the way, as Colorado State, 3 points in the span of 15 plus minutes. The Colorado State Rams, they get up in this game by a count of 8-2. That was with 15-17 remaining in the first half. They scored 3 points the rest of the half, and sadly they found themselves with a chance to be able to claw their way back. They were down just 6 points with 4:12 remaining, but they are unable to get the job done against Texas. 56-44 the final. Colorado State, 29.5% from floor. You have to wonder if just the ghost of Virginia rubbed off on them or something like that. This was bad. For Colorado State, 19 turnovers on 17 made field goals, and a little bit of an aside, people are saying we should expand the NCAA tournament. Look at how these last teams in as at-larges have fared. Not good, to say the least. As for Texas, 1 of 14 from 3-point range, but Max Asmus, Dylan Dessou, they both provide you with 12 points apiece. That was more than enough on this day to be able to get the job done against Colorado State team. That, overall, they had a nice season, but they just laid a turd in this one. For Iowa State, this has been a rock-solid team all season long, and they cash in over and they get the job done up against South Dakota State. 82-65 the final. This was a spread right around about 15.5, 16, and for Iowa State, it was Milan Mimosilovic who was able to chip in their 19 points. DJ Otzelberger's old stopping grounds of South Dakota State actually did a relatively solid job of being able to shoot it from 3-point range, 10 of 24 from the outside. Zeke Mayo provided 19 points, but problem for South Dakota State, they lose that turnover battle by kind of 15-9, and then Taymon Lipsby, Keshawn Gilbert, they combine for 32 points, 12 assists while turning the ball over just 4 times. It's been a South Dakota State team that has been on the fritz in terms of their defense all season long, and for Iowa State, how about them now being 24-10-1 against the spread? They have been a cover machine all season long. By the way, melancholy trails to South Carolina, who I mentioned before, they're now 23-11 against the spread. That's how their season ends, so unfortunate that one of our money-making machines, they're out of the fold, but NC State, talk about a team that's getting out at the right time. 80-67, they take down Texas Tech, as Texas Tech went just 7 of 31 from 3-point range, and DJ Burns, he just continues to be a social media marvel. 16 points in this one. You have Mohamed Diarra be able to provide a double-double, 17 points, 12 rebounds, as Texas Tech plays even up on the glass, 13-13. They play even up with regards to turnovers, but this team just going ice cold from 3. Pops Isaacs, he went 3 of 16 from the floor, 1 of 10 from 3. That was the difference. NC State stepping it up with regards to their defense, and then late in the day to be able to wrap up the Thursday, how about the effort from Sam Iamford? They very nearly pulled this one off after they were down by kind of 63-41 in this game. They got down 22 points, but Accor was able to do a nice job helping lead the team back. He provided 23 points, and for Samford, they got the game that they wanted. They won the turnover battle 18-7. Problem was Hunter Dickinson had a 19-20 performance, 19 points, 20 rebounds, 4 blocks. Did not look injured at all in this game. As for Kansas, they go 17-27 at the free throw line, and for Samford, if they shoot better than 13 of 23 at the free throw line, perhaps we're having a little bit of a different conversation, as they did a nice job being able to give 14 offensive rebounds. They did a nice job getting those turnovers, but they also just were unable to hit those free throws to really allow them to be able to get the job done in this one. And if you're taking a look at what we've seen all season long in terms of college basketball, boy, oh boy, things have been very interesting on that front, as it's been a little bit more of a favorite season in general. Favorites hitting at 50.6% for the season, 2,808, 2,737, and 100 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs overall for the season hitting at 50.9%, 2,842 overs, 2,737 unders. And just looking at what we got from day one of the NCAA tournament, favorites go 9-6-1 against the spread, and overs, you had 7 overs to 9 unders. So that's what we saw in college basketball on Thursday, and that's what we're seeing trend-wise. Coming up next, let's take a look at Friday in this wonderful NCAA tournament with Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bet Show and so much more. Underdog Fantasy is also where you're able to catch him, and he joins me next right here on Cuz Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now America's Decent Daily Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cuz Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. It is great to be joined by this man, as Rob Donaldson. He does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets Show. I know that he's doing some work over at Underdog Fantasy and so many other places. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And hey, baseball back in our lives as well. And Rob, I know he does a great job on that front as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at RobDFB all together. And Rob, am I talking to you after you viewed the 5 a.m. Central game in baseball? That's something that you're going to be diving in on next week.
You know, I did take a peek at it, and I was kind of leaning towards the over. I figured, you know what? I have so much money out in the NCAA tournament and even the NIT right now that baseball for this little section of time can take a back seat. But I did, in fact, watch the game.
I absolutely love it, and it's going to be a lot of fun to be able to take a look at that all year long. But now we've got the best time in college basketball upon us as well, and we're doing this just as the Thursday games are getting going. So we've got a fresh slate for Friday. But just what were some of the things that you were taking a look at when it came to both the bets that you made for the first round of the NCAA tournament, along with the way that you filled out your bracket? Were there sort of, I guess you'd call it, types of teams they were looking to back/fade?
Absolutely. You know, you're looking for teams that, one, have experience. Two, I think there's a lot of great coaches in the mid-major ranks that really don't get talked about. I mean, you look at UAB, for example, and I think that's an amazing example with Andy Kennedy, who has just been left and right at UAB every single year, just producing winning teams, and they're getting absolutely overlooked because of the San Diego State billing and them going to the championship game last year. But this is not the same San Diego State team, and I think they're very overseeded in this matchup. And I think because of that, UAB is kind of getting disrespected. So across the board, you can find teams like that from, say, Yale in the Ivy League, or, you know, New Mexico coming out of the Mountain West, where I feel like they were kind of getting overlooked. I mean, they got an 11 seed, and they just beat San Diego State, who got the 5 seed. So there's a lot of dynamics at play where I think we're getting a lot of inherent value, and that's definitely something I try to scope out in the first round here.
Yep, and I love that you bring that up as well, because we're going to be seeing a pair of Mountain West teams on Friday, and we're doing this as we don't know how the Mountain West teams for Thursday did, but how much do you buy into the narrative, by the way, trio of Mountain West teams on Friday, not just 2, but how much do you buy into the narrative of people poo-pooing the Mountain West, saying, oh, they just got one team into the title last year, but past that, they haven't done a lot else? Because while I do think that there might be a little bit of something to that from past years, I just take a look at this season and this season only, and the Mountain West, outside of really what we were seeing out there in, I'll put the SEC in that sort of level, the Big 12, and then obviously what we were able to get in the Big East as well. Outside those 3 conferences, I felt like the Mountain West was playing as high of a level of competition and just had as good of a conference in general as, say, the Big Ten, as, say, the Pac-12.
Yeah, and at every single point in a conference's budding, you know, aspirations to become that next tier, they go through this public scrutiny where a lot of people are questioning whether or not they're actually a good conference. And then it finally takes that one team to kind of break through to show that, yeah, this conference does play really great basketball. And San Diego State and Brian Dutcher have been doing that forever. I mean, even if the COVID season hadn't happened and then the tournament even happened there, San Diego State's a 1 seed. Who knows what happens with San Diego State in that tournament? Left and right, you know, Colorado State has had some great teams over the years with Isaiah Stevens now, but you go back to David Roddy and, you know, they had some really great squads. Utah State, you know, just come having a few great teams as well in that mix. And so there's been a lot of great Mountain West teams that haven't been able to get over the hump per se, but they are playing some really great basketball, and this just feels like the year where the talent in the league is inevitable, and it's really going to show itself.
I do think so as well, and I think that this could be a very good year for the conference, and I was right there with you on New Mexico being underseeded, and clearly bookmakers think so as well. They're between a 2 to 2.5 point favorite here against Clemson, and how do you gauge these games where the lower seeded team is the team that is actually favored, like we do have in this New Mexico versus Clemson game? Because I wholeheartedly agree, don't want to be laying anything more than a 2, but I do agree with the handicap on this that the bookmakers put out.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's very telling when you see an 11 seed laying 2.5, 3 points against a 6 seed. I think there's two flips to the coin there. One, I think New Mexico is the caliber of a 5 or a 6 seed, and I actually think Clemson is more in the line of 7 or 8 in terms of just how good I think they actually are. And so when you do see a line like that, and even, just kind of looking down the road towards Colorado State going up against Texas, it's kind of almost like a pick'em line. And I do think that's very telling there too. And I think you kind of got to buy in this time of year. I mean, we've seen it in years past. You go back to a few tournaments ago when Middle Tennessee State and the Blue Raiders were a 12 seed laying, I think, 4.5, 5 points against the 5 seed Minnesota Golden Gophers. And that was a no-doubter, start to finish for the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders. So you kind of got to buy in here because I think, again, these lines are so sharp this time of year. And when you are seeing a lower seed laying points, I think it's very telling.
Yep, that was speaking to me as well. And I was thinking when I was setting my handicap, it's like, man, hopefully the bookmakers don't make New Mexico a favorite like I did. But, of course, they're hip to that, and they were smart enough to be able to do so. As Rob Donaldson is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, does an amazing job being able to look at this great game of college basketball. And then one of the biggest line moves that we've seen here in the round of 64, that's on this Florida Atlantic versus Northwestern game. A lot of places had Northwestern as a very slight favorite. Now Florida Atlantic is a 2.5 point favorite with a total of 141.5. And when Florida Atlantic was more around that pick'em spot, I thought that was good value on them. I felt like they should be the favorite. Now that they're laying 2.5, I think that's gotten to a little bit of a point of no return for me. I'm not sure how you view this, but I felt like bookmakers maybe got it a little bit wrong on that opener. But now that Florida Atlantic is minus 2.5, I think that's just going a little bit too far.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually still like him at this number of laying 2.5, even laying up to 3 points. And I almost kind of have to view Florida Atlantic from the viewpoint of scrape your mind on kind of what we've seen defensively from this team, and even in just kind of neutral court spots and being just a turnstile defensively and playing basically AAU ball. Yes, they have really great guards in terms of Jarnell Davis, Elijah Martin, and, Brian Weatherspoon, Brian Greenlee, and Vladimir down low is a great big as well. Probably one of the best centers in this entire, playoff here. And when you're looking at the makeup of this team, I do think it's built for March. Whether or not they can actually defend well enough to potentially beat UConn in the next round or even Northwestern up front here, that's what's really going to be put to the test. But I think there's plenty of talent for this team to be seen as a top 10, even top 15 team in the entire field here.
Yep, and if things do hold the form and Florida Atlantic has to go up against UConn, that's when I think things are a little bit rough. But I do take a look at that entire region for UConn, and my goodness gracious, it's very difficult to say the least. Now, they did them a solid in the first game. They're going to be playing against Stetson. They're currently 26 to 26.5 point favorites, and I think that that's a relatively on-point number. This is not the time where you want to be getting frisky and playing money lines on Stetson. But that said, just how do you look at the draw for UConn? As we are going to be seeing them on Friday, and while they should be able to get by Stetson, I think after that it does get very difficult for them.
One thing that I do think is going to play into fruition for whoever gets to the Sweet 16 out of that 1 seed trajectory, whether that's UConn or whether that's Northwestern or FAU, is you might see a very odd team in the Sweet 16. I think Yale is going to be live against Auburn. I also think UAB is going to be live against San Diego State. If one of those teams is bounced in terms of San Diego State or Auburn, you might be looking at a favorable matchup regardless of who is coming out of that 1 seed trajectory in that Sweet 16. And that's what we kind of saw last year with the Cinderella lines. And that's whatever really always happens in the Sweet 16 every single year when you have a 15 or a 16 seed inheriting that, crazy line trajectory. But I do think UConn had a pretty relatively tough draw. I don't think it was the worst out of the 1 seeds, but Florida Atlantic, just kind of going back to them, I think they're immensely talented. And even if Northwestern gets there, even without Ty Berry, I think they have the firepower to get it done against them too. So they're going to be put to the test, in round 2, in the round of 32. Potentially, they might have a little bit of a cakewalk in the Sweet 16, but the Elite 8 is where things get a little bit fiery.
And that leads me to my follow-up, as you said that UConn might not have gotten the roughest draw among the 1 seeds. Which one do you think did? Because we're also going to be seeing a 1 seed in Purdue. They're going to be going up against Grambling, and I feel safe in saying that is not the 1 seed that you are referring to.
I'm actually looking at Houston as the toughest 1 seed that I think got the toughest draw, because no matter who they play in the round of 32, whether it's Nebraska or Texas A&M, you're either going up against a heartthrob right now, taking the college basketball world by storm with KC Tominaga, or you're going up against Wade Taylor and Buzz Williams for Texas A&M, who played their best basketball in the SEC tournament and really almost beat Florida to get to the championship game as well there too. And so regardless of who you're kind of going up against in the round of 32, best of luck, because you're going to have your hands full. And then when you look at the Sweet 16 trajectory line, if you're kind of looking at Wisconsin or Duke potentially getting to that Sweet 16, you're having back-to-back games where you're going to be tested in a multitude of ways. And even that entire bracket, when you're looking at Kentucky, Florida, Texas Tech, and even Marquette, those are all teams that if you said that they're going to be in the Final Four, I wouldn't blink. I think they're all of that caliber. And so Houston, they might have a little bit of a problem, not to be too cliche, but I do think that they definitely had the toughest draw of all the 1 seeds here.
Yep, with Houston, that's going to be a rough round of 32 game. I think that they might have gotten a little bit more help when it comes to perhaps an Elite 8 Sweet 16 matchup, but in terms of the round of 32, that's going to be tough as well. And then I take a look at this 1 seed, and I feel like they get a tough draw with regards to whoever comes out of that TCU game as well. That TCU versus Utah State game is one that is very top of mind for me, with TCU finding themselves as a 4-point favorite as we're doing this. And how do you view that matchup? Because I do take a look at Utah State. They've got a great on their team and great Osabor. And for TCU, this team does a really nice job being able to rebound themselves. And I take a look at that matchup, and whoever comes out of this one, I think that they could be very live to be able to get to the Sweet 16 as well.
Yeah, that would definitely be a fun game. I kind of think back to the Arizona TCU game where it was a 1-9 matchup or 1-8 matchup, a few years ago when Benedict Mathurin threw down an insane dunk over, I think it was Eddie Lampkin. And I think that could be a very similar style where you're going to have a dogfight all the way through. It really is just going to come down to, who makes those last plays in the last 2 minutes of the game. This year, I do want to buy in a little bit to Purdue making a little bit of a run here. And I think there's a lot of inherent value, even if you're talking about futures, taking them to the Elite 8 or the Final Four, because of the adjusted money line and prices in the event that they actually get to those spots. I do think Purdue is just going to have a different mindset this year. If they don't, there's going to have to be some real talks about whether Matt Painter is the right coach for this program, which feels so odd to say, but they got to find some success and get to a second weekend and a little bit beyond that to define the season as successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that Purdue, whoever they draw in that round of 32 matchup, assuming they get by Grambling, which typically we don't have to make that assumption, but after last year, we have to try to do that. I don't think that they trip up this season, but that would be relatively rough for them. And then also on Friday, we're going to see some of these heartthrob 12 seeds that so many people love, and both, as we are recording this, are about 5.5-point underdogs. Grand Canyon versus St. Mary's, along with James Madison versus Wisconsin. How do you view those 2 games? And is this a situation where you want to be fading these trendy dogs, or do you see a little bit of value on one, if not both of them?
I see a lot of value on Grand Canyon, not only to win this round, but to also advance to the Sweet 16. I think there's a ton of inherent value there, especially when you're looking at plus 650 odds just to make the Sweet 16. Because when you're looking at that second round matchup potentially for Grand Canyon, you're going to see either Alabama, a jump shot reliant team that can sometimes go in waves. We've seen that with every single NATO's team, whether it's here in Alabama or at Buffalo. And also on the other side is Pat Kelsey and Charleston, who could definitely pull a live upset. So in the event that Charleston pulls an upset and Grand Canyon pulls an upset, you're probably looking around at a pick 'em in round 2 with, plus 650 waiting on the other side. That's great hedge value. That's a great leveraged payout as well. And so I do love Grand Canyon. And then in regards to Wisconsin and James Madison, I do think James Madison is getting a little bit too trendy, especially against the Wisconsin team that's playing its best basketball right now. When trendy teams are this trendy for a dog getting 6.5, 7 points, or even 5.5, man, it's hard pressed for me to take those points. I think Wisconsin's going to play it on here a little bit.
And then I do have to wrap it up with this, because this is a time of year where everyone loves Cinderellas and everyone loves brackets. Were there any futures that you were willing to take, whether that be team to make the Sweet 16, Final Four, maybe a title pick? Were there any futures that you dove in on, or is this going to be a little bit more of a game-to-game tournament for you?
So there is going to be a lot of futures that I'm placing. And in terms of potential Cinderellas, I am definitely looking at Yale. I think Yale is going to be able to pull an upset in round 1 against Auburn. And then kind of similar to what we just talked about at the beginning part of the show, UAB and San Diego State are the team that potentially feed in that round of 32 matchup. I think UAB is potentially live there too. And even if San Diego State does win, I think, again, they are just overseeded. So when you're talking about Yale potentially being a pull and upset in round 1 and then getting a little bit of a favorable matchup in round 2 just because of overseeding, I really do think that there's going to be an open door for them to win just one more game and then advance to Elite Eight and potentially beyond.
Yep, and when you're just able to get to that second week of the NCAA tournament, as we know, anything could happen. Heck, we saw the St. Peter's Peacocks 2 years ago be able to make it to the Sweet 16 and then make it to the Elite Eight as well. But this man, he is always elite, whether it is during the Elite Eight or just any of the other days of the year. That'd be you, Rob. You do an absolutely amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love. So let the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
And thank you, Greg, for having me on, not only today, but throughout the entire season. And it's only going to be just the pinnacle as right now, but it's only going to be great basketball from here and out. And really appreciate having me on. And for those who are wanting to follow me, you can do so on X, formerly Twitter, at RobDFB. And you can also look up my name, just Rob Donaldson, on YouTube, and you can find my videos on there. But as always, Greg, really appreciate having me on.
Always great to have Rob aboard. Such a great mind when it comes to taking a look at this amazing sport of college basketball. And every single time he joins the show, I feel like we get a little bit smarter. So big thanks to Rob for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson. He does such a good job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. Every single time he joins this show, he lends such good insights, and my goodness gracious, it is a wild NCAA tournament. It's hard to make sense out of everything that we are getting, but he does his best to make sense out of the senseless. So, big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_81, and we are going to be going in the Las Vegas station order. This is where we're going to be going with the games in New York first. Indianapolis is going to be up after that. Then we go to the Tennessee/Memphis pod, and things wrap up in Spokane, Washington. So we've got a lot of fun coming up, and the fun starts with 7:57, 7:58 on the betting board. It is a lopsided affair between Stetson and UConn. UConn finds themselves as anywhere between 26 and 26.5 point favorites. Totals anywhere between 145.5 and 146.5, and circumstance where 26 is the absolute max, I'm going to be willing to lay with UConn. I did set my line at a 26.5. For UConn, this has just been a completely dominant team. They're a top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They do go up against a Stetson team that, as a collective, they shoot north of 36% from three-point range. You've got guys that are really able to pop it from three-point range, but now you have to go up against a UConn team that early on during the season, they struggled a little bit with regards to their three-point shooting defense, but now they're back in the top 75 in that front as well. Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, they're combining for 30 points per contest. Between the two of them, darn near 10 assists per contest. Spencer is your guy that really pops it from 3 at 44%. Newton more of a threat to go off for a triple-double. And then got Giant of the Year, Van Klingen, who's giving you 7 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest. And Alex Caravan always goes under the radar. He shoots 39.5% from 3, nearly 89% the free throw line with 14 points per contest. Just remarkable what he does. And when you need someone like an Asan Diarra, Stephon Castle to be able to step up, these guys are able to as well. For Stetson, they just game match your size down low. You got Oben Gesterse. He's able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, but they're just going to get absolutely clocked on the glass. UConn, number 4 in all of college basketball, in terms of rebound rate, so much size, so much athleticism, and then got Stetson team that's 246th in all of college basketball with this respect. Now, I do think that just having a go-to scorer in Mr. Blackman, as Jalen Blackman has been able to give you 21.5 points per contest, that helps out a little bit for Stetson, and Stephon Swenson is able to give you some assists as well. Team does actually a solid job of taking care of the ball, but problem is they don't force any turnovers as well. They allow opponents to shoot about 33.5% from three-point range. It goes even further in a roadside shoot court setting, and that's mostly against Atlantic Sun teams that really don't shoot it well from three-point range. I think that they're going to be completely outgunned. I like Alec Oglesby, but outside their main starting 5, they really don't have a lot of depth either. So I do think that this UConn team just too strong, too fast, but I actually do like this total under just mainly because it's a Stetson team that's outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, because I do think that UConn is going to alter so many shots. I do think that you're looking at it under in this spot. Did set my total more around a 144.5, so at the 145.5 plus, looking at the under with UConn, willing to lay up to 26 with them. 759, 760 on the betting board. It is Duke, and they're going to be playing against Vermont. Vermont is an underdog of anywhere between 11.5 to 12 points, so on this game is 132. I just think that Vermont is outgunned in this matchup as well. I'm willing to lay with Duke, set Duke as a 14.5 point favorite. This is a Duke team that they did have a little bit of a tough go of it towards the back half of the season, but Duke has actually been a better team on the road than they have been in past years. They did go to Arkansas and lost that game early on during the season, but after that they were able to put it behind them. They were able to do a nice job being able to go on the road, knocking off teams like an NC State. You saw them absolutely crush Miami, granted a down Miami team, but they went on the road. They challenged themselves a little bit more this season, which I think is going to be very big in the setting. And for Duke, this team plays at a little bit of a slower tempo than they used to under Coach K. They're outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. Vermont is a team that looks to really slow it down, but Duke just so efficient. A top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Darius Proctor, not a dominant scorer, but he's able to give you 4 assists, less than 1.5 turnovers per game, shoots 36.5% from 3, and for this Duke team, among your top 6 scorers, all but one of them shoot at least 35% from distance, and that's Mark Mitchell, who really doesn't pop up from 3. He gives you about 6 boards, 12.5 points per game, and for Vermont, Shamir Bogues, who stands right around 6'4", is really the only guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Vermont is just going to be completely outgunned on the glass, going up against Kyle Filipowski. 17 points, 8 boards. As long as there's no court storming going on, it'll be just fine for a Duke team that is actually a top 10 team in all of college basketball. With regards to their road rebound rate, Vermont more on 175th. Now, Vermont does a relatively solid job in terms of their defense. They've actually been one of the top 100 teams in all of college basketball. Much of that is due to the combo platter of being a top 25 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and being a team that's well outside the top 315 in terms of total possessions per game. This team is looking to slow it down. They're looking to make things a big giant slog, but I mean, this is also a Duke team that is a top 35 team of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Vermont very much looking to outside shooting to be able to get the job done. You've been able to someone like a Matt Ferrato be able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range for Vermont. They also do a nice job of being able to guard the arc themselves in a roadside shoot court setting. They allow opponents to shoot 33% from three-point range. It's a Duke team that, when they've been away from home, they've allowed opponents to shoot a little bit closer to 34% from the outside, but with Vermont just not having really any way of being able to generate second chances, and Vermont just doesn't cause any ball pressure either. They don't force any turnovers whatsoever, even though you do have something like TJ Long that's able to give you 12 points per game. I just think that they're not going to be able to hold in this game. I do think that Duke is going to be able to take it to a significantly smaller Vermont team. I'm willing to lay the number at Duke, and I did set my total at 134.5. I just think that Vermont, in a step-up game against a Duke team that has all this size and athleticism, they're going to struggle. So I do like this total over with Duke's efficiency, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now here comes my DK Network Rorida pick. Let's look to get back online on these. 761, 762 on the card. Wisconsin is going to be playing against James Madison. James Madison, 5.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 145. Personally, with regards to my personal bet and my bracket, I advance James Madison. I'm going to take them on the money line because with the write-up picks, typically we have to go with the spread. I just wrote up plus 5.5 with James Madison, but whether you're looking James Madison plus 5.5, whether you're looking money line, whether you're looking to advance him in a bracket, I am on James Madison. That is indeed the write-up as James Madison, top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. You've also got really good depth with this team. You've got 8 separate guys that are giving you 15-plus minutes per contest. They go up against a Wisconsin team that has just been absolutely miserable with the way that they have been guarding the arc in a road/neutral court environment. Wisconsin allows opponents to shoot 39.2% from three-point range. 355th in all of college basketball, and for James Madison, this is a good shooting team. They shoot 36.5% from three-point range. Not like a top 10 three-point shooting team or anything like that, but got a guy in Terrence Edwards who's able to give you 17 points. He shoots about 35.5% from three-point range. Noah Friedel, Julian Wood, and these are guys that combine for about 22 points per contest. Combine and shoot in that pocket about 38.5% to 39% from the outside, so you're able to feel relatively good about that. Going against a Wisconsin team that does have their scoring drop-off when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. This is a Wisconsin team that scores about 9.7 points fewer per 100 possessions when away from home rather than at home. And for Wisconsin, on the road, they do shoot about 35% from three-point range, relatively respectable mark. But now they have to go up against a James Madison team that is second in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, with opponents shooting less than 29% against them. It's a James Madison team that as well, they do a nice job protecting the ball. They're a top 35 team in terms of total possessions per game. Only turned the ball over about 10.8 times per contest while generating quite a few steals. Now, for Wisconsin, this has been a top 50 team in terms of ball security. You've got A.J. Soar, who's able to give you about 17 points per contest, and then Stephen Krull, Tyler Wall. Down low, they've done a nice job, combining for about 12.5 rebounds per game. Krull has been able to shoot about 45.5% from the outside, but Soar is shooting still about 33% from three-point range. You're expecting him to pick it up a little bit, and depth is a little bit of an issue for this Wisconsin team as well. Having to go up against a James Madison team that runs and guns, the fact that they've only got 6 guys in their rotation that give you north of 9.6 minutes per contest, that's a little bit rough. You're going to need someone like a Kamari McGee perhaps to be able to step up, give this team a few minutes, because I think that they might be a little bit exhausted towards back half of this one. It's a James Madison team that is going to be showing no fear whatsoever with the fact that they led off the season going on the road, getting the job done with an outright win against Michigan State. And for this James Madison team, they travel really well in so many different facets. Their three-point shooting percentage is actually higher on the road rather than when they are at home. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're still a top 12 team in all of college basketball in that regard. I think that Wisconsin, a team that's well outside the top 185 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, despite the fact that they're 4-2 in their last 6. I mean, they're 6-9 in their last 15 games. They just have not been able to defend all season long. Have a James Madison team that is going to be able to fully exploit that, as they've been able to get to at least 80 points in all but 1 out of their last 7 games. I do think that for Wisconsin, going to be doomsday for them. Now, with regards to the total, I did set mine at a 145 right now. We're seeing mostly 145s out there. I was seeing a few straight 144.5s, and if we could get back to a 144.5, that'll be my buy point on the over. But right up here, that is on James Madison. Like I said, I personally am willing to take them out right on the money line. The write-up is just going to be on the points, but if you're feeling frisky, if you want the money line, absolutely do take it. 763, 764 on the betting board. Northwestern is going to be playing against Florida Atlantic, and Florida Atlantic does find themselves as a favorite of 3 to 3.5 points on this game, between 143 to 143.5. I think we've gone a little bit too far with this one. I set Florida Atlantic as a 2-point favorite, and early on I found some good value. Like, a lot of the openers were Florida Atlantic being like right around about a pick'em. I already bet Florida Atlantic personally, but here at a 3.5, I just can't advocate for this. If you're getting that 3.5, I would say that's a good buy point on Northwestern. I do think that this is going to be a relative nip and tuck game, and which is going to involve a pair of teams that just haven't been great with regards to their defense. I was referring to it with Wisconsin. Both of these teams are outside the top 125 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and for Florida Atlantic, their perimeter defense really goes into the abyss when they're away from home. For Florida Atlantic, they allow opponents to shoot only about 29.8% from three-point range at home. They've been one of the better teams in all of college basketball with that regard. Meanwhile, they hit the road, and they're anything but that. They allow opponents to shoot 36% from the outside. Meanwhile, for Northwestern, 312th in the country in opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that does fall off to about 33% when they're away from home. Now, what's going to doom Northwestern is that they are well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. For Atlantic, they're more of a top 80 team with this regard. You got Boo Buie, who is rock solid for Northwestern. He gives you a little bit of everything. 19 points, 3.5 boards, 5 assists. Shoots 44.5% from three-point range, but Ty Berry, their number 4 scorer, he's out of the fold for the entirety of the season. Maybe deal with a little bit of ailment to Matthew Nicholson, who's been able to give this team 4.5 rebounds per game, and he's their second top rebounder. The only other player that gives you north of 4.3 rebounds per game, Brooks Barnhizer, who's been solid, 14.5 points, 7.5 boards, but having to go up against the 7-footer and Vladislav Golden, who gives you about 6.5 boards, blocking at per contest. That's going to be critical. And then John L. Davis, he's not quite the facilitator / the do-it-all sort of player that Boo Buie is, but he shoots 42.5% from three. He's able to supply the team with about 18 points per contest. And then from there, you've got the ancillary pieces like a Brian Greenlee, Nicholas Boyd, these guys that do a nice job, give you some offense from the backcourt spots. I do think that Northwestern going to have a little bit of a tough time with this. Now, Northwestern's defense has been able to surge towards the back half of the season. 70 points for years surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games, but this is a Florida Atlantic team that they just really have not hit a wall in terms of their offense. This Florida Atlantic team has gotten to at least 73 points in every one of their games since the beginning of the month of February. I do think that they're going to be able to get this game ranked a little bit more up-tempo, and I think that you're going to see some inefficient defense and some very efficient offense. Set my line at 2, so at 3+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Northwestern, and at the total, I set mine at a 146. Also like the over. 765, 766 on the betting board. Purdue and Grambling do battle, and Grambling is an underdog of 26.5 at 27 points. So on a game between 138.5 and 139. Pretty much a home game out there in the great state of Indiana for Purdue as we now head to the Indianapolis region of the bracket. And with Purdue, I did set them as a 29.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. No doubt about it, there's going to be a lot of people bringing up the fact that Purdue lost to the 16 seed last year. Grambling's first win outside the conference against a non-D1 team came a few days ago against Montana State. They dug themselves a very early hole in for Grambling. This bunch just is not a very effective team in general when it comes to their offense. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a slow-tempo team with about 13.5 turnovers per game, and they don't have a main facilitator. Jermichael Morton gives you about 2.5 assists, 11.5 points per game, but they assist on fewer than 10 of their baskets every game. This team does shoot about 33.5% from the outside, but if you saw the game that they played a few days ago, Jamel Kofer had to bail the team out. He had 19 points in the game. Jamel Kofer, prior to that game, he had a grand total of 14 points in the previous 6 games combined. You can't be banking on that too much moving forward, and it's not like it's necessarily a deep team. It was just a guy that got hot at the right time. Grambling also outside the top 225 in terms of their rebound rate, going up against a Purdue team that absolutely dominates on the glass. Zach Edey, Giant of the Year, 24.5 points, 11.5 boards, and for Purdue, you've got all sorts of shooting options for this team. All but one out of their top 8 scorers shoots above 36% from three-point range, and every one of them shoots at least 35.5% from the outside. I do think that Braden Smith is going to be a little bit banged up in this game. He has been tremendous in the backcourt, 12.5 points, 7.5 assists. You tell that he was not himself when he played that game against Wisconsin. He had suffered a little bit of a bone bruise, it appeared. We were talking about this with the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, yesterday, and he only had 7 points in that game. I think that he's going to play, but he's going to be rather limited in this game. But you saw Fletcher Lawyer is able to drain 44% of his threes. You've been able to have Trey Kaufman-Wren be able to step up as he's 6'9", little bit of a combo player. It's a Grambling team that in general doesn't generate a lot of turnovers. And for Purdue, we talk all about this team and their size, their ability to rebound. They're a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. I do think that they're going to flatten this Grambling team, but I just don't think that Grambling is going to be able to do their part in terms of the total line. If you've been watching this Purdue team over the last month, they've been playing at a rate of about 5 possessions fewer per game than they did towards the front half of the season. It is a Purdue team that has now given up 70 plus points for their last 5 games, but I don't think the Grambling going to be able to get that sort of offense. With Grambling coming off of an overtime game a few days ago, I think that's going to be rough for them. Set my line at 29.5. Want to lay with Purdue, and did so I told 135.5. I also do like this little under 767, 768 on the betting board. It is Marquette playing against Western Kentucky out there in Indiana. Marquette is a favorite of between 14 to 15 points, and your total between 157 to 158. I'm willing to take the points with Western Kentucky. I did set them as an underdog of 11.5 points. Tyler Kolek is going to be all good to go in this one, and I think he's going to be relatively close to 100%. It did feel like the reason why he set out the Big East tournament was more precautionary rather than anything else, and that's going to be big for a Marquette team that really feeds off of his energy. He's one of the best facilitators in the country, 15 points, 7.5 assists, shoots 40% from 3, and we did see Cam Jones be able to really take his spot as the facilitator when he was out of the fold. He was able to give the team north of 4 assists in each of the last 4 games, and I do think that that is actually going to be helping this Marquette team moving forward, as they do a very good job of being able to just keep things clean. They only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest while being a top 30 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. That is going to be a little bit rough for Western Kentucky, who is a bunch that they turn the ball over 13.5 times per game. And for Western Kentucky, they are absolutely looking to run it and gun it. top 10 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Marquette, though they were quite fast last season, they've been more of a mid-tempo team this season. Not like super duper fast, not super duper slow, but what I think is going to be hurting them is that you just have a better of different options. They're able to rebound for this Western Kentucky team. You pretty much have 5 separate guys. They're able to give you at least 4.5 rebounds per game. You don't have that one guy that absolutely dominates down low as Babacar Faye. He's been able to give you about 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but Western Kentucky, a top 85 team in the country in rebound rate. Marquette, they are outside the top 225. Also, Ogudero has been solid down low. 14 points, 7 boards, gives you a little bit over a block per game. Nobody else on the roster gives you north of 4.7 rebounds per game, and the guy that gives you 4.7 boards, that'd be Tyler Kolek. So that's going to be a bit of an issue for a Marquette team that has really been able to elevate in terms of their three-point shooting. Their top 5 players that made at least 1 3 this year, all but one of them shooting at least 35.9% from the outside. But Western Kentucky has done a really good job with their perimeter defense, and I do think that they're going to be able to hold up at the point of attack. It's a Western Kentucky team that is falling off a little bit from when they were like a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they're still checking in 80th in the country, and away from home, opponents are shooting just 31% from the outside. Meanwhile, you do have a Marquette team that they're going to allow a few open looks from the outside. They do allow opponents to shoot 34% from three-point range, having Don McHenry be able to give you 15.5 points per game. That's big for a Western Kentucky team that has quite a few different scoring options outside of them. Outside of them, you've pretty much got 6 other guys that give you between 7.5 and 10.5 points per contest. They've been dealing with a few injuries, as I know that they've been having Christian Lander be in and out of the fold, but he's come back and he's given the team 8+ points each of the last 4 games. I do think that though Western Kentucky going to get a little bit sloppy with it. I think that their overall rebounding going to be able to keep them lively in this game. I do think that the turnovers cost you an over. I said my total 155.5. I like the under. And with Marquette, it's not them as just an 11.5 point favorite. So taking the points with Western Kentucky and taking a look at this total under 769, 770 on the betting board. Florida and Colorado do battle from Indiana, and Colorado's a 1.5 point underdog. Total on this game between 158 and 159.5. The travel, honestly, not too bad, going from Dayton to the great state of Indiana, so not too much to take it out of Colorado, but for Colorado, this team has been a little bit different when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home, and I'm going to be willing to fade them here. I did set Florida as a 2-point favorite. Don't want to be laying anything more than the 1.5, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5. You've got Micah Hanglon, who's most likely going to be out of the fold, I would say, for the entirety of the tournament for Florida. I've yet to see reports, but I just assumed him out. He pretty much snapped his leg in the SEC championship, so, let's say not high expectations there, but do have high expectations for Walter Clayton along Zion Pullen, who are pulling in buckets. These two guys have been able to supply you with about 32.5 points per contest. You've got Clayton and Pullen being able to combine for about 7.5 assists per game, and Pullen shoots 44% from 3. For a Florida team that they play very up-tempo, but they only turn the ball for about 11.8 times per contest. Colorado, a little bit more of an up-tempo team as well, but they're 12.5 turnovers per game. That is a little bit costly in my opinion. Got KJ Simpson, who's going to be the most versatile and just best player out there in Florida in general. 5 assists, 6 boards, 19.5 points, shoots 44.5% from three-point range. And for this Colorado unit, among players that have made at least 1 3 this season, all but one of them out of their top 7 shoot at least 38% from the outside. So that's going to really be taking out of this Florida team. But for Florida, I do think that they're going to be able to hold up at the point of attack now. With Florida, they have not been the same perimeter defense when they've been away from home rather than when they've been at home. At home, Florida allows opponents to shoot just 27.5% from 3. That balloons up to 35.6% in a roadside-shooting court setting. Meanwhile, Colorado away from home, they allow opponents to shoot just 32.5% from the outside, but what Florida has going for them, they are absolutely amazing on the glass. Now, Colorado, they're a top 25 team with regards to rebound rate. Eddie Lampkin has been able to give you 7+ rebounds per game, but Florida, in terms of percentage of missed shots, that result in an offensive rebound, 36.6%. That is a top 7 mark in all of college basketball. I do think that is going to be rough on a Colorado team that they do turn the ball over a little bit to start with, like Tristan De Silva, what he's been able to bring to the table. He's able to shoot about 38% from three-point range. And Cody Williams, I mean, he's been a relative no-show recently. He had as many points as myself in that game against Boise State. I'm not sure what's happening, but single digits for him in each of the last 5 games. That's been a little bit costly, and this is a Florida team that's going to be looking to get up and down. I do think that their overall rebounding, even with Hanglon being out of the fold, it's going to be a little bit too much. I did set my total at a 156 here, at 159.5. Do think that we've gone a little bit too far. I think that Florida is going to be embracing rebounding, and you've got a Colorado team that just as not able to put the ball in the basket recently, 72 points or fewer each of their last 4 games. So I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1.5 with Florida. 771, 772 on the betting board. Utah State is going to be playing against TCU. TCU is a favorite of 3.5 to 4 points. Your total on this game is anywhere between 150.5 to 151, and with TCU. I did make them a 4-point favorite. Not willing to go anything above 3.5, but I'm going to be willing to lay 3.5 with them. Utah State does a really good job on the glass. They do have a great Osobor. He's able to give you 15 plus points, right around about 9 rebounds per game, but they have to go up against a TCU team that's been one of your better rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. 35th in the country in terms of rebound rate. Utah State, they're clocking in more around 66th in all of college basketball. We certainly have seen these struggles of the Big 12 teams as well. And for Utah State, big issue for them, they really don't shoot it well from three-point range. They're a top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're only shooting as collective just above 32.2% from three-point range. That falls off to about 31.9% in a road/neutral court setting. Going against a TCU team that's been much improved this year in terms of their outside shooting. They're about 86th in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage. And for TCU, you've just got a lot of different options when it comes to this team. Meanwhile, when it comes to Utah State, Darius Brown, he does a really nice job doling out the ball. He's able to give you about 10, 11 points per contest. He gives you 6.5 assists and 1.9 turnovers per game, so it doesn't fall in the vector of just turning the ball over a whole heck of a lot. But for TCU, you've got a lot of interchangeable parts, like Avery Anderson is able to give you 8 points, 3.5 assists per contest, and then you've got each of your top 3 scorers, Micah Peavy, Jameer Nelson Jr., Emmanuel Miller. They all give you at least 2.7 assists per contest. In the case of Miller, shoots 38% from 3, leads the team with 6 rebounds, 16 points per game. He has been very versatile, while Trey Tennyson, he's become a north of 41.5% three-point shooter for this bunch as well. TCU does turn the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like, 12.5 turnovers per game, but it's not like this Utah State team has necessarily been very demonstrative in the way that they've been able to generate turnovers. Meanwhile, this is a TCU team that they're going to be looking to wrestle the ball away from you. So it's going to be a battle of can Utah State be able to hold on to the ball against a Texas Christian team that ranks 22nd in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and all about guarding that three-point arc as well, which Utah State, they are going to have an edge there. Utah State, number 3 in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and while TCU isn't necessarily quite as good as that, they do allow opponents to shoot just 32.3% in a road/neutral court setting. I do think that TCU, just with their various different options down low, I do think that that's going to take it out of a Utah State team that, while you've got the good front line talent, I'm just not sure if guys like Ian Martinez are going to be able to step up, give the team the offense needed. Josh Uduche has been able to do a solid job at 8.5 points per game, but really outside of Darius Brown along with Ian Martinez, don't have anyone else on the roster that gives you meaningful minutes that shoots about 34.5% from distance, and I think that that's going to be doomsday for Utah State. Willing to lay up to 3.5 with TCU, and did semi total at a 144. You've got a pair of teams that play relatively up tempo, but I do think that the defenses of both of these teams being a little bit undervalued here. So I'm going to be taking a look at this total under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with TCU up to 3.5. 773, 774. This is out there in Memphis, Tennessee. You've got Longwood and Houston doing battle, and Houston is a 24.5 to a 24-point favorite. Total on this game is 128. I actually have Houston to be able to win the national title game, but I don't have them covering the spread. Set my line at 18.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Longwood, but I think it's going to keep Longwood lively in this game. They do an absolutely amazing job on the glass. They are a top 25 team with regards to rebound rate, as you've got a lot of size. You've also got Christmas on this team. That'd be Michael Christmas, as he, along with Simon Zapala, Jonathan Massey, they've done a nice job being able to combine for about 17.5 rebounds per game. Christmas and Massey both give you about 11.5 points per game, and it's a Longwood team that now shoots about 34.5% from the outside, going against a Houston team that they don't necessarily shoot it well. They are outside the top 225 in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, shoot-point shooting percentage, and just their free throw shooting percentage, but yet they're 43rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That's because they're one of the best rebound rate teams in all of college basketball, and also because they have the best turnover ratio in all of college basketball. They only turn the ball over 8.9 times per contest. Meanwhile, they generate north of 15 turnovers per game. You've got Jamal Shed, who I think is just an amazing point guard. 6 assists, 13 points, 2.5 steals. Meanwhile, LJ Cryer, he shoots 39% from the outside, 15.5 points per contest. Down low, someone like an Emmanuel Sharp is able to give you about 12 points, 4 boards per contest as well. So I do think what this team brings to the table, and it is a Longwood team that they turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. Waylon Napper gives you 14.5 points, 4.5 assists. Not a real threat to be able to pop it from the outside, but I do like the way that this Longwood defense has been able to step up if you look at regulation and regulation only, because their game against High Point went to overtime. 72 points surrendered in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, Houston has given up less than 60 in 4 of their last 5, but offense has been a little bit hit or miss for the team as well, scoring less than 68 points in 3 of their last 5 games. I do think that this is going to be a slow down slog, but I do think that Longwood's overall rebounding keeps them alive in this one. I set my total 124.5. I like the under with Houston. Made them an 18.5 point favorite, so we'll take the north of 20 here with Longwood. 775, 776 on the betting board. Colgate and Baylor do battle from Tennessee, and Colgate is an underdog of 14 to 14.5 points total on this game between 137.5 and 139, and I'm willing to lay up to 14.5 with Baylor. Set them as a 15-point favorite. Baylor has had their issues when guarding on the road. They give up north of 13 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court setting rather than at home, allowing opponents to shoot 36.7% from the outside away from home compared to 30.3% at home, while Colgate, they're actually 11th at all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They've been a very dominant defense, but much of this has been against a Patriot League that has some very, very subpar competition, to say the least. They have a top scorer in Braden Smith, who is no relation to Purdue's Braden Smith, and he's been solid. He's been able to supply this team with about 12 points, throws in there 5 boards, 5 assists, but this team is going to get plowed on the glass. You've got a Baylor team that does rank in the top 40 in terms of rebound rate. This despite the fact that they don't have that one dominant guy that's going to go out there and is going to give you like 8+ rebounds per game. Yves Massey, Jalen Bridges, they both give between about 5 to 5.5 rebounds per game, and Keegan Records on the flip side for Colgate, he's been able to give you about 10 points, 6 boards, and it's a Colgate team that they're not like a bad three-point shooting team, but they're down from what they have been in past years. They're right now shooting about 36% from three-point range. That's a top 50 mark in all of college basketball, but we saw them in non-conference play really have their struggles on the offensive side of things, and for Colgate, it has been a three-point shooting unit for this team that, it's been able to travel relatively well. They shoot about 35% when they're away from home. Baylor, they do take quite a bit of a drop-off with their three-point shooting. They shoot 44.3% at home, more like 34.5% in a roadside shoot court environment, but having Ray J. Dennis along Jacoby Walter give you a combined about 27.5 points per game and be able to do a nice job while getting this Baylor team to run pretty efficiently on offense, I think is big. And then you got the ancillary scores from there. Langston Love, probably not going to see a lot out of him, if anything, in this game, but Jaden Nunn, he's been able to shoot 40% from three, supplies the team with about 12.5 points per contest. You've been able to get some relatively good production just all over the map with regards to this team. I do think that you're going to be able to get just a little bit more moving forward, even out of someone like Caleb Lohner, has been only seeing a few minutes, but he's got some versatility. He's able to do a nice job down low, and I do think that Baylor, going against a Colgate team that has been one of the slowest in all of college basketball, that's really going to help them out, and I do think that Baylor is going to be able to flatten them with their three-point shooting, and this is just an offense unlike something that Colgate has seen in the Patriot League. I did set my total 141. I like the over, and with Baylor, did set them as a 15-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. 777, 778 on the betting board. New Mexico is going to be playing against Clemson. Clemson is a underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. Your total on this game, it is between 152 to 151.5. Set my line at 2.5. Don't want to lay anything more than 2 with New Mexico, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. I know that this has been a much maligned Mountain West, to say the least, in recent days, but you know what, with New Mexico, this team is very rock solid. They're a top 50 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, while also being a top 45 team in terms of their rebound rate. They do a tremendous job of hitting the glass, with Nelly Jr., Joseph, JT Toppin combined for 17 rebounds, about 21.5 points per game, and then you've got a pair of guys, Donovan Dent along with Jalen House, that do just such a good job of being able to hold out the ball. Combined 9 assists, about 30.5 points per contest, while both are able to contribute about 4 steals per game. And on top of that, for New Mexico, they play up tempo. They're a top 50 team in terms of total possessions per game, top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, going against a Clemson team that legitimately is one of the more efficient teams in all of college basketball in terms of their offense, top 30 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They shoot about 34.7% in a roadside shoot court venue from three-point range, so I'd like to see that be a little bit higher in New Mexico. They don't necessarily shoot it amazing themselves. They only shoot about 32.8% when they are away from home, but it is a Clemson team that has Joe Girard, who's going to be one of the best spot-up shooters in this game, shoots north of 42% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with about 15.5 points per contest, throws in there 3 assists, and then the big key is PJ Hall, 18.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots in the low 30s from three-point range for a Clemson team that, if you look at their top scorers, out of their top 6 scorers, you've only got 2 of these guys shooting above 33.3% from three-point range. So even though they are really efficient on offense, it's not necessarily because they're going to bury you with their three-point shooting, but it is a Clemson team that you have to have your concerns about them on defense. Whereas New Mexico, they're actually a pretty rock-solid defense, while Clemson, 189th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And New Mexico's defense has been able to travel as well. So many people talk up the pit and the great environment that it is. Their three-point shooting defense does take a little bit of fall. They allow opponents to shoot 32.9% away from home. At home, this is more around 27.5% from the outside, but for New Mexico, in terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, only rises by about 6.4 points per 100 possessions, and their offense has been able to stay relatively steady as well. Meanwhile, you do have a Clemson team that they've been playing a little bit different when they've been away from home rather than when they've been at home. They're already in a little bit of a rough spot with being 180th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do give up about 7 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And then from an offensive side of things, they do suffer a drop-off of about 8.5 points per 100 possessions away from home. I do think that with having that backcourt duo along with Jamal Mashburn Jr. giving you darn near 15 points per contest for New Mexico, Mustafa Amzil doing his part as well, that they are going to be able to get to Clemson. I think that New Mexico wins from within, and for New Mexico, 66 points or fewer surrendered in each of the last 4 games. They're really playing some good defense. I did set my total of 150.5, even though New Mexico plays up tempo. They're pretty efficient with their defense. With Clemson, they've seen a drop-off with their overall three-point shooting, so I'm going to be looking at the under. I'm willing to lay up to a deuce here with New Mexico. 779, 780 on the betting board. Nebraska and Texas A&M do battle, and Texas A&M is an underdog of a point, and your total on this game is between 147 to 147.5. Me, Texas A&M, the 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line with Texas A&M. They do a really good job of hitting the glass. As a matter of fact, a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. Now, it's a bunch that they really don't shoot it very well. Texas A&M still outside the top 325 in terms of overall three-point shooting percentage. They shoot as a collective 28.4%, but I absolutely love the way that Wade Taylor is able to stuff the stat sheet for the team. 19 points, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3.5 rebounds per game. They do go up against a Nebraska team that there is a team in the NCAA tournament that's going to give them some relatively good looks from three-point range. It certainly is this Nebraska unit that away from home, they allow opponents to shoot 33.7% from the outside. And it's been a hit or miss Texas A&M team with regards to their perimeter defense. They do allow opponents to shoot about 34% from the outside as well, and they have to go up against Casey Shomanaga. Now, Casey Shomanaga is an absolutely tremendous knockdown scorer. He's able to give you about 15 or so points per contest, shoots it really well from three-point range. He doesn't do anything really other than score, though. He gives you 2.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists per game. Would like to see him be a little bit more versatile, and that I think is going to be the undoing of Nebraska. You've got Rink Mass, who's able to do a solid job, giving you 12.5 points, 7.5 boards per contest. Juwan Gary is able to chip in there at 6 rebounds per game. So, I mean, this is a Nebraska team that even though their rebound rate is outside the top 100, they've got guys that are able to hit the glass. Bryce Williams is able to shoot 39% from three-point range, and if you do get in a nip-and-tuck game for Nebraska, they've got 4 of their top 5 scorers shooting at least 84% of the free throw line. That should speak to you a little bit there. Nebraska only turns the ball over about 11 times per contest, but I do think that the Texas A&M defense, it is going to be able to hold up in this case. You've got a Nebraska team as well. Just has not been the same team when they've been away from home. Nebraska, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 60th in all of college basketball, but they give up 14 more points per 100 possessions in a road/court setting rather than at home. Meanwhile, you've got a Texas A&M unit that they're about 153rd in the country. They give up more like 8 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. And big question becomes, can this Nebraska team be able to shoot it as well as they do in Lincoln in a neutral court setting for Nebraska? Points scored on a per possession basis. They're also 60th in all of college basketball, but they see a drop-off of about 7.5 points per 100 possessions when they leave home, going against an A&M team that they only see a drop-off of about 1.9 points per 100 possessions with their offense. I do think that A&M wins from within on the glass. I set Texas A&M as a 1.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line, and I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Semi-total 143.5. 781, 782 on the betting board. This is from Spokane, Washington. Yale and Auburn do battle. Auburn is a favorite of 12.5 points. Total going to be finding this between 140.5 and 141, seeing a straight 140 out there as well. And in this ordeal, I'm going to be willing to lay with Auburn. Think that they're one of the most well-rounded teams in all of college basketball. Set them as a 14-point favorite. And for Yale, they've been able to have tremendous success this season. They are a bunch as in the top 70 with regards to the rebound rate. They've got Danny Wolf, who's able to give you 14.5 points, 9.5 rebounds per game, but I just think that the overall athletes that you're going to see in the SEC and the way that they get physical down low with Auburn specifically, I do think is going to take it out of them. You just don't have anyone, in my opinion, that matches up well with G&I Broom, who's really cleaning up. And Danny Wolf, he does a nice job popping it from three-point range for Yale. You've got that with Broom as well. He shoots 35% from three, 2.5 blocks, 16 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, for this Auburn team, you get north of 6 blocks per contest. They are a top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're in the top 20 in both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. You've really seen this team pick it up with their three-point shooting as well. Each of your top 4 scorers shoot above 35% from distance, as Denver Jones, Jalen Williams, Chad Baker-Mazara, they all shoot at least 39.8% from the outside. Aiden Holloway has sort of faded away towards the back half of the season, but he and Trey Donaldson still combining for about 6 assists per game. And for Yale, they do a nice job of taking care of the ball as well. Top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Only turn the ball over 9.5 times per contest. I like Bass and Big being able to give you 4 boards, 4 assists, 11.5 points per contest. And then you've got John Polodikas, who shoots 39.5% from the outside. But you just take a look at this Yale team, and you pretty much got 2 players on the roster that shoot above 34.5% from three-point range. And I just don't think that they're going to be able to do a good job holding up on the glass against an Auburn team that has one of the best rebound rates in all of college basketball, both on the offensive end, being able to get second and third chances, and on the defensive end, not allowing you to be able to get those second chances as well. I do think that Yale is going to be able to put up some points here, but at the same time, I do think that Auburn really going to be able to take it out of them. This is an Auburn team that if you take a look at the way that they ended the season, they got to at least 85 points in 4 of their last 5 games while giving up 67 or fewer each of their last 3. So I just think that this is a little bit of a classic mismatch, and I do think that having to step up in terms of physicality and competition, not going to be the friend of Yale. I did set my line at 14. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total at a 142. Also do like this total over 783, 784 on the betting board. Alabama and Charleston do battle from Washington. You've got Alabama a 9 to a 9.5 point favorite. Total between 172.5 and 173.5. Did set my total at 169. I'm going to be taking a look at the under for Charleston. This is an up-tempo team, but they're not like an outrageously up-tempo team. They're about 100th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Now, we all know that Alabama's been running it and gunning it, and this is an Alabama defense that has been not great, to say the least. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, our good friend the Crimson Tide, 262nd in all of college basketball, and they do give up about 19.6 points more per 100 possessions when away from home rather than at home. It's a Charleston team that as well, they're about 151st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but fall off is only by about 4.9 points when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, and both of these teams play relatively similar styles. So I actually do think that that's going to make it a little bit easier for both of these teams to be able to make adjustments. For Charleston, it's a little greater than the sum of its parts approach. They average north of 80 points per game, and they don't have a single guy that averages north of 12.8 points per contest. That'd be Brain Smith, shoots 39.5% from 3, gives you about 12.5 points per game for a Charleston team that they shoot a modest 34.5% from 3-point range. Nothing great, nothing terrible. To the credit of Charleston, top 20 team in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, going up against an Alabama unit in which you do have a demonstrative scorer, Mark Sears, who's going to be the best scorer in this game. 21 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, shoots 43% from 3-point range, but you do have a Alabama team that it could be a little bit hit or miss from the outside, and Alabama, they really do like to stroke it from 3-point range. They're a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of shots that do come from 3-point range. Alabama, they've been a relatively solid rebounding team as well. Top 65 team in all of college basketball. This despite the fact that really the only guy that gives you north of 5.3 rebounds per game is Grant Nelson, but Aaron Action Estrada, very versatile player, 4.5 assists, 5.5 boards, 13.5 points per game. You've been able to have Ryland Griffin shoot about 37.5% from the outside, but I think that Charleston hangs in there because you do have more guys that do a balanced job of being able to hit the boards. As out of your top 5 scorers, 4 of them give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, out of your top 6 scorers, all but one of them give you at least 3.7 rebounds per contest. It's one of those teams in which they make like hockey-style line changes. You've got a guy in CJ Fulton that only gives you 4.2 points per game, but doles out about 4 assists per contest, gives you a steal per game. I do think that Charleston going to be looking to just be able to bear down a little bit more with regards to their outside shooting defense as well. This is an Alabama team that they actually do come in 61st in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is a pair of teams that they love to shoot it from 3, and for Charleston, they allow opponents to shoot about 34.3% from the outside when away from home. I think that you just don't get enough threes to be able to fall in this game for an over. Set my total 169. I like the under. I think that Charleston, they do a good job on the glass to be able to hold in this game. Set my line at 7. So take a look at the points with Charleston and taking a look at this little under. 785, 786 on the betting board. San Diego State is going to be playing against UAB. UAB a 6.5 to a 7-point underdog with your total between 139 and 140. And with UAB, I did set them as an underdog of 8 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Mountain West has been having a relatively rough time of it, but I do think that they are going to be able to get something out of the San Diego State team, a team that was able to make the national title game a season ago. And San Diego State, one of the best 3-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball, 21st in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and UAB gives it up from the outside, 256th in the country with this regard. Now, I will say this about UAB. They've done a good job of being able to hit the road. For UAB, they allow opponents to shoot more like 33 33.5% from three-point range away from home, closer to about 37% at home. But this is also a UAB team that isn't necessarily the world's greatest with their offense. They actually generate about 3.5 points more per 100 possessions when away from home rather than at home. They're about 75th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Yaxel Lenborg has been a big reason why, about 14 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. And in terms of offensive rebound rate, UAB, a top 40 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their misses that they corral as an offensive rebound. Meanwhile, San Diego State, more around 110th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they don't take too much of a fall off when they're away from home as well. They only average about 2.4 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. And I do think that Jalen Ledee, he's going to be the top player in this game for Jaden Ledee. 21 points, 8.5 boards, just is able to completely dominate a game. And for San Diego State, they do a nice job of just protecting the ball. You haven't gotten a lot of scoring out of Lamont Butler, Darion Trammell, these two guys that are back from last season. They only give you combined about 17 points per contest. Neither shoots above 31% from three, but they combined to give you 6.2 assists, about 2.8 turnovers per game. You've been able to have Reese Six and Waters shoot 37% from the outside. Gives you about 10 points per contest. Meanwhile, it is a UAB team that they get a little bit rough with regards to taking care of the ball, about 11.5 turnovers per game. You've got, don't call his name, Alejandro Vasquez, shooting about 39% from three-point range, but he's literally the only player on the roster that shoots above 35% from three-point range. Ephraim Johnson, along with Eric Gaines, they combine to be able to give you about 23.5 points per game, but outside of Lenborg, the only other player that gives you north of 4.6 rebounds per game on this team, Javion Davis. I think that San Diego State does a good job on the glass, despite the fact that UAB has been able to generate a lot of second and third chances. And I think that the defense of San Diego State, which they have their numbers very much warped right now. If you look at it, they've given up 70 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. 2 of those games went to overtime, though. So if you're looking at regulation and regulation only, this has been a very rock solid defense that has not been giving up too many points. So I do think that San Diego State going to be able to get it done with their defense. And as a result, I did also set my total more around a 142. I think we've gone a little bit too low here. I do think that UAB can get into the mid to high 60s, but with the way that UAB has been giving up points as well, 69 plus in 4 of their last 5, I do think that San Diego State is going to be able to get well north of 70 here. So I'm going to be willing to lay with San Diego State, made them an 8-point favorite. Also set my total 142. Going to be looking at this total over, and we wrap things up with 787, 788 on the betting board. St. Mary's is going to be playing against Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon and an underdog of 5.5 points. It's a last game between 131 to 132, and with Grand Canyon, I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points. I actually advanced Grand Canyon in my bracket, but in terms of the spread, I'm just going to be willing to take the points. Going to lay off the money line here. It's a Grand Canyon team that is very much similar to St. Mary's. They're obviously a little bit more up-tempo than that, but both of these teams play solid defense. Both of these teams, top 30 teams in all of college basketball, turns points a lot on a per possession basis. St. Mary's edges out Grand Canyon. They've given up fewer points on a per possession basis, and St. Mary's, a top 10 team in the country with regards to rebound rate. Grand Canyon, a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. But the one thing that Grand Canyon has been able to do, they've been able to travel really well. St. Mary's number 2 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. Grand Canyon number 4. So I do think that Grand Canyon going to be able to match what St. Mary's is able to do, and I think that Grand Canyon is the most versatile player out there on the floor. Ty Graham Foster, 20 points, 6 boards, 1.7 steals, 1.4 blocks on 33% three-point shooting. There's just nobody on St. Mary's that really is able to do that. You do have Augustus Marasolinas along with Ada Mahaney. These two guys combined for about 26.5 points per game. Marasolinas has been able to give you 5 assists, doesn't turn the ball over a lot. And for the St. Mary's team, they were putrid with their offense to begin the season. Talk about being able to pick it up. They're now 31st in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they score about 9.6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. And Grand Canyon is about 53rd with this regard. They too score about 8 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. So you've got a lot of similarities there. Mitchell Saxton is someone that I'd like down low for St. Mary's, 7.5 boards, 11.5 points per game. Meanwhile, Gabe McLaughlin on the flip side for Grand Canyon, 13 points, 5 plus boards. He's able to pop it from 3-point range, but Joshua Jefferson deal with the injury that he is for St. Mary's. That does take out of them a little bit of the rebounding that they have, though I do think that Harry Wessels is going to be able to pick it up. He's been able to give the team 3.5 rebounds per game. Mason Forbes has been seeing a few more minutes as well, but I do think that with Grand Canyon having just a little bit more to the outside, you've got a 43% three-point shooter in Javon Blackshear that last season, he was a go-to scorer for the team with about 10.5 points. He didn't shoot it well from 3. He's been in a little bit more of an off-the-bench role this season. It's worked out really well for them, and I do think that Grand Canyon, in the end, they've got a good chance to be able to pull off this upset. I'm going to be playing it safe with regards to the spread bet in. Just going to be taking the 5.5 with Grand Canyon, but do note that I took them on my bracket and did set my total at 129.5. Both of these teams very efficient on both sides of things, but both of these teams well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, so I do like the under, set my total 129.5, and taking the points with Grand Canyon, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to our good friend Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bets Show for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @UNIT_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to on this podcast via that 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.